This podcast series is part of the mission of the New York Intellectual Property Law Association, NYIPLA, Past Presidents Committee, to preserve a snippet of the history of our association through the eyes of our past presidents and to provide continuity for our century-old association's values and traditions for future NYIPLA leaders. I'm Rob Rando, the current president of NYIPLA for the 2023-2024 term. We are pleased to have Tom Creel with us today. He was the 73rd president of NYIPLA during the 1995-1996 term. Tom, welcome, and thank you for participating. Do you have anything you want to tell us before we get into the questions?
Hello, all. No, let's go ahead with whatever you want to ask Rob, and I may have some things to add in at various times.
Super. So as we begin, please tell us a little about who you are and where you are in your career or life today.
All right, this is going to take a long time. Look, I'm a Midwesterner. I grew up in Kansas City, and then I went to the University of Kansas, and I have an aeronautical engineering degree from there. But I learned quite quickly that engineering was not for me, that had I been an aeronautical engineer, we might have had more problems with aircraft failures. But I didn't know what else to switch to, so I went ahead and got my aeronautical engineering degree. And along the way, someone said, well, you have engineering degree, you don't know what you want to do, why don't you become a patent attorney? I'd never heard of a patent attorney. And that's kind of the way my life has gone. I don't think I've planned much. Things are, you come to a fork in the road and you go one way or the other. So I wanted to become a patent attorney. Then I went to the University of Michigan Law School, and they did have a patent course there, quite unusual in those days. This is back in the 60s. So I graduated from there, and then I had been an ROTC student at Kansas, and so I had to go into the military. Now, I was commissioned right after law school, and I said I wanted to go to law school, and they gave me a deferment. So I went to law school while I was a second lieutenant. Midway through my law school experience, I got something from the Department of Army saying, congratulations, Lieutenant Creel, you've been promoted to first lieutenant. Now, I'd never been in the Army. How the hell could I be promoted when I've never been in? The reason, if you're such a poor second lieutenant, that you're not promoted within 18 months, they kick you out. So the choice was kick me out or promote me. And so I learned something about bureaucracy before I'd even gone into the practice of law. So I graduated, and I was in the JAG Corps. I served 3.5 years at the Pentagon. And I was a patent attorney at the Pentagon, if you can believe that. The Army has, at that time, had 7 patent attorney slots. And they were actually, we were all registered patent attorneys. And one of my jobs was to review secrecy applications. I don't remember the exact procedure, but when patent application was filed in a certain area that was considered top secret or confidential, it was sent, if it involved the Army, was sent to me for review. Now, I'm a 20-something-year-old guy who hasn't done much in life, and I'm reviewing these patent applications to see whether they should be able to be filed overseas or not. One story about the Pentagon, when I reported to the Pentagon, I came in and I said, Lieutenant Creel reporting for duty, sir. I had my dress uniform on, and the colonel said, "Why do you have your uniform on?" I said, "I don't know, I'm reporting for duty." And at that time, nobody wore uniforms at the Pentagon. Maybe the generals did, and maybe bird colonels, but below that, no. And I tried to find out why. The why I got were two reasons. One or both may be correct, was that everybody in the world has an embassy at the Pentagon. In Washington, D.C. And we didn't want the rest of the world to think we were a militaristic nation, because all of these people running around D.C. in uniform. That's one reason. Second reason was Congress is in D.C. You didn't want to remind Congress of the fact that they were spending a bunch of money on. Hold on a minute, Carol. Sorry, my wife is here.
That's okay.
So I'm going through this, and I know it's going to be edited, but I've got some nuggets that I want to point out. Okay, so now I'm ready to leave the Pentagon. I got to find a job somewhere. I've never been to New York for various reasons I won't go into. I wound up at Kenyon and Kenyon in New York. Kenyon and Kenyon was one of the premier patent firms at the time. While I was there, I had two very, very interesting experiences. I'm not sure what happened to today's world. We were at a case called Montecatini. Montecatini had invented polypropylene. Montecatini was the biggest oil company, I think, in Italy. And we went over to take depositions of the inventors and the other people helping to develop that technology. I was supposed to be there for 6 weeks. I wound up being in Italy for 4 months.
Wow.
Position. That would never happen today with the bean counters and so forth. And I'd never been in Europe before, so it was a wonderful experience. The other one was the antitrust case of SCM versus Xerox. SCM was claiming Xerox had monopolized the plain paper copying industry by refusing to license their patents on xerography. And that was a case in Hartford, Connecticut. And that at the time, maybe still is, was the longest civil jury trial in history. That went on for, I don't know, 4 months, something like that. So we had a jury sitting 5 days a week for that period of time, and I was there for that period of time. I'll go sideways. What kind of a jury do you get for that length of time? You get retired people who can give you the time. You get housewives, unemployed people. But the one that I didn't know about, didn't think about, were union people. Union contracts said you got off for jury duty, and they didn't say for how long. You had jurors that were in the union. So that's just some sidelights on that.
Well,
we'll probably get into this later, but one of the turning points in the practice of the law was the case of Eastman Kodak versus Polaroid. Eastman Kodak was going to start an instant camera photography like Polaroid had. Polaroid had a series of patents. They sued Eastman Kodak. They won. They got an injunction setting out such that a whole division of Eastman Kodak was shut down, setting a lot of people out of their jobs. and there was $1 billion verdict, which was huge at the time.
Yeah.
This was in the Reagan years, and Reagan was, I'll say, the antitrust lawyers were not busy. And in those days, the business was parceled out by in-house patent counsel. But because the antitrust lawyers didn't have a lot of work to do, because a whole division of a major company was thrown out of business, because there was $1 billion verdict, the in-house general counsel, who had basically been letting the antitrust counsel do as they pleased, decided that they better get involved. And that was a change of, in my mind, the whole practice of intellectual property law, patent law, because the general practice firms started to get involved, saying, why should we send our business to Kenyon and Kenyon, to Fish and Neve, to the other general practice firms, other patent firms, when we could do a lot of this ourselves. And since then, a lot of the, most of the patent boutique, big patent boutiques have merged or gone out of business, and the general practice firms have patent divisions. In the days when I started in the 60s, we had a wonderful relationship with the general practice firms. They didn't do patent work, and they referred all of the patent work to the patent firms. We didn't do anything else but patents. So they could refer clients to us without concern about us stealing the clients. And that all stopped. So that's, and we may get into this later too, but a major turning point about that same time was the creation of the Federal Circuit.
Yep.
In 1982, I think. Before that, there were so-called patent-friendly districts in the country. You could file a patent suit anywhere, and it would go up to the circuit court. So the Seventh Circuit, the Chicago area, was considered a very patent-friendly court, and so you always tried to get your cases filed there. I'm now from Kenyon and Kenyon. I moved to Kay Scholler. Kay Scholler was and is a general practice firm. Actually, it's merged, but it was a general practice firm. And I was co-chair of the patent litigation group there. One of the reasons I left Kenyon and Kenyon was a great firm. Kenyon is a great firm. One of the reasons I left was because I saw the kind of litigation that I did there being done by general practice firms. And so I moved to a general practice firm. And from there, I went to another general practice firm, Goodwin Proctor, from whom I retired. And so that takes me up to not quite today. So today I am with JAMS, which I believe is the largest provider of arbitration and mediation services in the world. And I just actually got back from a mediation in London, which was quite a treat. We got to spend a little more time there after the mediation.
Nice.
And I also, to finish this, when I retired, I had some time, and we actually lived in the suburbs. And, we moved to the cities because I wanted to New York City because I wanted to help the city and pay more taxes than I would pay in the suburbs. And my wife said I should do something citified, and she said she never used such a word, but I said, do what? Run numbers? And she said, try act.
Yeah.
So I am now a union member myself with SAG and a working actor. Just did an audition, a self-tape this morning. So that's a long-winded answer, and I sure a lot of it will be cut out to your very simple question.
Well, no, I found it fascinating, and I always enjoy when I'm doing this, and I learn things about the past president that I'm interviewing. You and I know each other a long time, Tom, and you reveal things to me that I wasn't aware of. So thank you. All right, so how did you first become aware of NYIPLA?
Well, as it says, I joined since I joined Kenyon and Kenyon. It was pretty much everybody there was a member of NYIPLA. Actually, at the time, it was the New York Patent Law Association. That's NYPA, I guess. PLA, NYPLA. And pretty much everybody was a member. The annual dinner was a big deal. Kenyon had a suite there. And so everyone knew about the association.
And do you recall when you first became involved with the association?
I became involved immediately. I'm not quite sure what committee I was on, but yeah, I got involved immediately.
And do you recall the activities and roles that you engaged in early on as a member?
Actually, I don't. Let me give you something that I was quite proud of a little later. I was chair of the arbitration committee, and we actually had BNA publish a book called The Guide to Patent Arbitration. It's out of print now. And it was really a wonderful, wonderful thing that was done by the members of that committee. I think there are maybe 10 chapters. Each chapter was written by a member of that committee. It took a lot of their time. So I was very, very proud of those people and the time that they would give to the practice of law.
Well, it's kind of come full circle because you're currently co-chair of the Arbitration Mediation Committee.
Rob appointed me, and I assume he thought I didn't have enough to do. I don't know.
So there come a time when you decided you wanted to assume a leadership role, or did it evolve over time?
Oh, I think it evolved. I don't think I made, as I said earlier, my life is a bunch of roads. I come to a fork and I take one or the other. But not much planning, so I didn't plan to take any kind of a leadership role.
And let's talk about your time as president. What was the trajectory in the association that led you to become president in terms of various leadership roles or the ladder?
Well, I was on the ladder, but the only leadership role I recall was, as I said, the chair of the arbitration committee. Somebody suggested that I become a second vice president or whatever it is. I don't recall exactly how I got on that ladder.
Sure. And I think you kind of touched on it early on, but and before we get into any specifics about your presidency, can you give us a general overview of the patent or intellectual property landscape in terms of the issues that were confronting the IP community during your time of your presidency?
Well, the answer to that, I guess, is I don't recall exactly in 93, 94 what the issues were. But let me just say that there were some issues left over from the earlier big deal that I mentioned earlier. The creation of the Federal Circuit to get a uniformity in patent law, which we didn't have before. And in the private practice area, the switch of from general practice, I'm sorry, from intellectual property firms to departments in bigger firms. The other thing, the creation of the Federal Circuit created an atmosphere where patents were enforceable. It was said before the Adams case, I think that was in the early 60s, that the only valid patent was one that the Supreme Court didn't get their hands on. When the Federal Circuit was created, it became a place where the landscape was that patents were enforceable, good patents were enforceable, in a much more exciting area to be enforcing patents.
I'd like to ask you your opinion and not trying to put you on the spot, but if you have a thought about it. From my perspective, I look at the patent law system in the U.S. and I try to draw some kind of correlation between economic growth and prosperity in the country and the strength of the patent system. I could be wrong, but since you practiced for many decades, do you think there's any correlation, a chicken egg situation? Right now we're going through a period of time where arguably patents have been weakened considerably. But my thought is that we had, when we experienced great prosperity in the 60s, that there's a correlation between the strength of patents and so forth, and even in the 80s. But you have any thoughts on that, Tom?
Well, let me try to unpack it a little bit. When I first started practicing law in the 60s, it was pretty easy to get patents declared invalid. There was generally an antipathy. There was generally a negative feeling towards enforcement of patents. We should, I don't know, it was the Ronald Reagan era, or that was the 80s. But in the 60s, patents were not a very good source of protection. And then, as I said, in the 80s, with the creation of the Federal Circuit, they became much more valuable. I'm not sure, Rob, of the economic growth with patent growth, but I can say that from the 60s to the 80s, there was a upward trend to the value of patents. And I can't comment, for example, now there's the validity of many patents is handled in the patent office. That was not true during my term as that was not true when I was actively practicing.
Okay, well, thanks. So getting back to when you were president, can you give us an idea of some of the tasks and responsibilities you were charged with during your term as president, things you were responsible for?
Well, I was blessed with being handed a very, very viable organization when I was elected president. And I basically tried to keep the train running on time. We had CLE programs, we had judges dinner, we had golf outing. I did not do as you are doing, Rob, and I congratulate you on that. I did not do any particular initiatives. Rather, I thought that the things we were doing were quite interesting, and so I tried to continue those.
Sure. Do you have any specific goal or mission that you wanted to accomplish during your time as president?
Yes, and that was to pass on to, hold on. That was to pass on the organization in as good a manner as I received it, if not better.
I like that. So from your perspective, what was your greatest accomplishment or proudest moment during the time that you were president?
All right, you're gonna think this is weird, but as you know, the president gets to pick whoever is his main speaker at the judges' dinner. And I did that. I picked Judge, I picked Mayor Giuliani. And as you know, the judges' dinner at that time, anyway, was the biggest event at the Waldorf every year. And it was like turning the Titanic to get anything changed. So the judges' dinners on Friday night. Thursday morning, I got a call from Mayor Giuliani's office, one of his aides, saying, okay, this is to confirm that Mayor Giuliani will be at the dinner to speak. He speaks at 6 o'clock. I said, whoa, wait a minute. He's the after dinner speaker. He's supposed to start at 8, not 6. And they said, well, you know, what we do is every morning we sit down with breakfast with him, and we set forth his schedule for the next day. This is set in stone. There's nothing you can do about it. And so I had a choice of trying to get it changed to 8 o'clock or have him be a pre-dinner speaker. I chose the latter. And the Waldorf was kind enough to change the schedule. So Giuliani spoke at the start of the dinner before, and it worked out quite well, actually. I probably shouldn't say this, but at that time there were suites open with liquor flowing freely, and so there was some noise. And before dinner was probably a better time to have people listening. And actually, after that, some of the presidents did have a pre-dinner speaker. But let me give this advice to former presidents. I was told later that you never want to invite as a speaker an active politician. That is someone who holds office, because there might be a fire, there might be some disaster that person is called away from, and they'll send somebody in their place to speak, maybe the director of the Department of Sanitation or something. But that's a problem. And I want to, there's a famous dinner, I don't know whether anybody's mentioned this or not. John Riley was president. He was a larger than life partner at Kenyon and Kenyon. And when he was president, this was in the 80s, in the Reagan years. I think it was Reagan years. No, it was the Johnson years, President Johnson. So John was president, and as I said, he's larger than life, so he decided to have a larger than life speaker. And so he invited President Johnson to speak at the judges' dinner. And the president politely declined, but he said, look, I've got somebody in my place, Admiral Rickover. Admiral Rickover was the head of the nuclear submarine department of the Army, of the nation. Unfortunately, by the time the dinner arrived, he had just been deposed for a lengthy deposition, and he had not the best opinion of lawyers. And he gave some of those unfavorable opinions at the dinner. And there were actually, excuse me, there were actually rolls thrown towards the speaker. so that was one of our famous dinners. So my point being, future presidents, be careful inviting people who actually are sitting politicians.
Yeah, though that advice has carried through
Okay.
over the years, and it's good advice. I'm picturing the dinner rolls. That's pretty funny.
Uh, I'm sorry, what was the question again? I don't think I answered. Oh, fifth best accomplishments. The
Yeah,
best accomplishments was to get the dinner going, as I said, with Mayor Giuliani's problem at the last minute. By the
yeah,
way, let me also comment on the dinner. In those days, may still be, it was the largest assemblage of I'm sorry, the largest assemblage of federal judges in the country, except for maybe the judicial conferences. But we had no security. I mean, today there must be all kinds of security.
yeah,
In those days, the judges came and they sat and talked and so forth and so on.
yeah. Certainly different world.
Yeah,
So this might be the same as your proudest moment or greatest accomplishment. What was your greatest challenge?
the same one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Um, but let me back up on my presidency and what you're doing, Rob, to get a record of our association. Um, I can almost get us back to the start of this association in 1922. That's 102 years ago. At Kenyon and Kenyon, I worked with Ted Kenyon. Now, Ted was the president, I believe, in 1940. So I can take us back. It was at 60, 40, 60, 84 years myself. I knew somebody who was president, but he was the son of William H. Kenyon, who founded the association and was our first president. So there's some memory for you.
Absolutely. Is there any anecdote that you might want to share?
Oh, I wish I had. I wish I had.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great. And again, that's one of the benefits that I've been experiencing with some of the past presidents, reaching back. Okay, so we've talked about your proudest moment, the greatest
Let me
accomplishment.
go back. You mentioned to have any anecdotes. I'm sure somebody else has mentioned this, but in the old days, there used to be performances by patent attorneys of little vignettes, plays, and so forth. I think one of the patent attorneys was a Broadway producer or something like that, and the menus were printed with as playbills. So
Nice, nice. Performances, we ought to think about that.
you got to think hard about it.
So, yeah, as I said, we talked about your greatest accomplishment, greatest challenge. What is your fondest memory?
I guess my fondest memory was going to some of the as president, you're invited to other patent associations events, and I went with my wife to many of those. Chicago, something in DC, I don't remember exactly. So I guess those are my fondest memories, being able to do that. As I mentioned earlier, my fondest memory of the association is probably getting the people on the arbitration committee to write that book. That was a wonderful thing to see 10 people volunteering to do all that work.
Sure. So, what advice can you give our younger or newer members of NYIPLA if they aspire to assume a leadership role or to perhaps even one day become president of NYIPLA?
Oh, I don't think I have any particular advice I can give, other than when you come to the fork in the road, and you go open one door or the other door, open one and go through it and continue on. So if that means working on a committee, do it. You can get invaluable experience from working on a committee. And that will elevate you probably to a chairmanship sometime, if you want it. And it's a lot of work. And then to a position on the board of the association. So, as I said, my life story is when a door is there, I open it and go through it. And that's not great advice, but that's the best I can do.
I like it. Can you add any advice for younger folks or newer members to get the most benefit from their membership in NYIPLA?
Yeah, I think the same thing. Join the committees, work with people. You get many things from working on a committee. You get to know a lot of people, which is wonderful. You get to use your skills, which is wonderful. You get to learn a bit about a particular area, which is wonderful. And generally, it's something to continue your upward trend in the practice.
Well, Tom, this has been really wonderful. I've truly enjoyed this conversation we've had. You have any final thoughts as we wrap up the interview?
No, but let me say this. We talk about the judges' dinner before and proudest moments. Before I was president, I was on the board and one of the officers of vice president. And my wife and I stayed over at the Waldorf, and I put on my tux and had my bow tie on and went down and sat on the dais for the whole dinner and so forth. And then went back up to our room afterwards. And I found that my tux jacket was on the back of the chair in the room. And I had sat there the whole time with my blue suit jacket on. Nobody said a word. I don't know whether that's kindness or what, but you're talking about fondest memories. That's one of my biggest memories. I don't think it's a fond memory necessarily.
Oh, that's really funny, but maybe everyone thought you were making a fashion statement.
They could.
Well, Tom, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Let me say one thing to congratulate you on this, on doing this. It's a lot of work. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing you're doing to get this memory down of our association for possibly generations to come, but certainly for people today to see what's going on and has gone on.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. All right. Well, enjoy the sunshine while we're freezing up here, and much luck and enjoyment going forward. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you at the dinner.
Okay. Thanks so much.